بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Continuation from what we left it. I know that the gap is a long time. We had the Hajj in the middle, but we have already started the prayer. And if you remember with me that during the Ramadan time we have jumped to the chapter of fasting. You remember? We talked about the fast. So back now to the prayer, and we are now dealing with the conditions for the prayer to be valid. Number one, the knowledge of the time entrance. That means any prayer would not be valid if it's being prayed before its time or after its time, except for a legitimate excuse, and that excuse not for every single prayer. So before the time of the prayer, we need to know that times is in the person when he is in a luxury situation, meaning that he's not being pushed, so he's got spacious time, and the times of the prayers are 5: Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha and Fajr. You may not pray Dhuhr before the time of Dhuhr or after Dhuhr. Same thing with the Asr, same thing with the Maghrib, same thing with the Isha. Remember, the Isha ends with midnight, and remember, Fajr ends with sunrise. Now, in the time of difficulty, the time of the prayer becomes 3 times instead of 5, and that is Dhuhr and Asr become 1, Maghrib and Isha become 1, and Fajr is always on its own. So if it is the case, then I will know. That is, I will not be able to pray, Dhuhr and Asr, unless it is difficult time to pray, to push the Dhuhr into the Asr or the Asr into the Dhuhr, because it become 1 time. But I may not push the Asr into the Maghrib, or push the Dhuhr before it's the time of Dhuhr. So I cannot drag the Dhuhr before the time of it, nor I could put Asr after Maghrib, after the sunset. So Dhuhr and Asr becomes together. Now if you have forgotten, or you had, for example, you slept through the time, that's something different. Because once you wake up, then the time starts from the time that you wake up. So if the person slept through the Dhuhr and the Asr all the way up to the Isha, and he woke up, he had, for example, a drug that made him dozing and that he couldn't really wake up, so he woke up Isha, he would pray Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib on its time, even though it is Isha time, because he has a legitimate excuse. Now we cannot imagine legitimate excuse to the person to pray Dhuhr before Dhuhr. You may not. You cannot pray Dhuhr before Dhuhr. But you could pray Dhuhr for legitimate excuse after Dhuhr. So you could put it in Asr because of journey. You could put it after Maghrib or Isha because you forgot or you slept through the time. But you may not pray the Dhuhr before Dhuhr. Same thing with the Maghrib. Maghrib starts and Maghrib and Isha can become together. I may not make the Maghrib before sunset. It's called Maghrib, sunset prayer. I cannot make it before, regardless of any situation. But I could make it after. I could make it in the Isha because of trouble, or because of something persisting, a very strong need. I could also make the Maghrib and the Isha after the elapse of the Isha, which is after midnight, if I forgot. If I forgot, or I slept through the time, no problem. I woke up till 2 o'clock in the morning, I will pray Maghrib and Isha. Same thing with the Fajr. Regardless of my excuse, no way I could pray Fajr before the time of the Fajr. There's no excuse. But I could pray Fajr after sunrise if I woke up after sunrise. If I had slept through the time or forgot, thought I prayed it and didn't pray it. So in this case, I could pray Fajr after sunrise if I slept through the time or I forgot. Same thing with the Asr and Dhuhr. But no prayer will be prayed before its time. Dhuhr cannot be prayed before its time. Asr could be prayed before its time because Asr and Dhuhr becomes what? One time. During the difficulty. Maghrib and Isha becomes, during the difficulty time becomes one time. I could make Isha before its time in Maghrib. But as I said, Maghrib and Isha becomes one time. So it is in its time. When we say Maghrib and Isha become one time, so you put the Isha into the Maghrib, still it is time because you are in difficulty. And that's the combination that we do in the journey or if a need takes place. The ayah regarding this proof for this, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Verily the prayer is a timed book upon the believer. Remember, this book is a concise. So what we have here, subtitle, then let's go straight away at a proof, Quran or Sunnah. We're not going through the difference among the scholars. So condition number 2.
Number 2, being in a state of purity, free of the major and minor defilements.
So definitely for your prayer to be valid, you have to be pure from both, whether it is the minor defilement like passing when like sleeping, or the major, which is like intercourse or janaba. Okay? Whether this or that, you have to be pure from both. What's the proof? Whether there is the ayah, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse number 6, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, or you believe if you're about to pray, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, then wash and then your hands, your face, and your hands up to the elbows. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, and also you wipe with your heads and your feet, wash your feet, إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, and that is up to the ankles. إِن كُنتُمْ جُنُبًا فَطَهَّرُوا, and if you were, وَإِن كُنتُمْ جُنُبًا, and if you were to be in sexual defilement, then make the ghusl. So also the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, the Prophet said, the Prophet of Allah had said, Allah Azza wa Jalla does not accept the prayer of a person without purification. Third one.
Number 3, purity of the clothes, body, and place in which one prays.
So now we talked about the purity of this, which we call it the wudu, the ghusl. Now we're talking about the purity of materialistic. Number 1, which is the garment, the thobe that you're praying in. Number 2, your body. It's not to do with the wudu, it's to do with your body it's got sort of no najasa on it, no impurity upon it. And the place where you're praying in. So those 3 places, the three things, have to be pure, have to be clean, and no najasa upon them. Now, as for the proof, for the tahar of the thawb, the purity of the thawb, which is the garment, then Allah says, وَتِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, and O Prophet of Allah, purify your garment. And also the Prophet of Allah, he said, if one of you comes to the masjid, then let him go and look at his shoes, because they used to pray in their shoes in the masjid, and let him look into his shoes. If he sees any impurity, let him rub it against the ground, and then let him pray in them. And as for the purity of the body, for verily the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Ali ibn Abi Talib regarding the madhi, the secretion that comes out after urination, he said, make wudu and wash your private part. So washing the private part to remove the impurity, because we said, remember, wadi and madhi are to be impure. Also he said to the one who's got the long period, wash the blood from you and do pray. And that is for the purity of the, and that is of course the purity of the woman who is in her prolonged period. The blood of hers is actually controversial. Is it pure or not pure? As for the place, probably the Prophet of Allah had said to his companions regarding that Bedouin man who had urinated in the masjid, he said, put water into the urination, where the spot where that man urinated, so throw a bucket of water and then you could use it to pray upon it. Now here he says something which is a note of a benefit. Can you just read it, please?
Note: if someone prays and unknowingly he had some impurity on him or his clothing, the prayer is still valid and he does not repeat the prayer. If he discovers it during the prayer and he is able to do so, if it is, for example, in his shoes or a garment that is not covering his private parts, remove it while praying, he removes it and continues praying. If he is not able to remove it, he just continues praying and he does not repeat his prayer. This is based on the hadith narrated by Abu Sa'id, in which the Prophet ﷺ was praying and he removed his sandals. Therefore the people also removed their sandals. When he had finished and turned to the people, he asked them why they had removed their sandals. They replied, we saw you remove yours, so we removed ours. Then he told them, Jibreel alayhi salam came to me and informed me that they had some filth on them. When one of you comes to the mosque, he should turn his sandals over and look at them. If there is some filth on them, he should wipe them on the ground and then pray in them.
Right, so he did not say anything regarding the purification of wudu. This is to do with the purification of the place or the body or the garment. Nothing to do with the wudu. Let me emphasize the fact. So if a person, let's say he prayed, then after he prayed he remembered he was not on wudu, he should and he must repeat his prayer. Okay? He must repeat his prayer. What's the proof for that? We find Umar al-Khattab, he had led the people in the prayer in the Fajr, and then after he had finished his Fajr prayer, he remembered that he was not on purity, he was in Janaba. So what he did, he had a ghusl. He himself repeated the prayer and did not command the others to repeat the prayer. So that tells us that a person, if he remembers that is on his, if he's not on wudu, he had what? He has to repeat the prayer. But if the person remembered that he's not on his wudu while he's praying, then we have a hadith. And this hadith from a companion where radiallahu anhu, hadith of Abi Bakr, in Sunan Abi Dawood, the Prophet ﷺ, he started, hadith Abi Hurairah, sorry. And the Prophet ﷺ, he started the prayer. And he said, Allahu Akbar. And then after that, he waved to the people, stay put. He didn't say a word, stay put. He went to his house, which is opening the door straight away where he's standing. He had a ghusl. And then he came and he completed his prayer. So he did not repeat Takbiratul Ihram. So the people, companions behind the Prophet of Allah, when the Prophet of Allah said Allahu Akbar, they said what? Allahu Akbar. What are they going to do after that? They're going to put their right on the left. So the Prophet ﷺ, he turned and he said, stay put, like that, with his hand. That means, wait. He went and also 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, came back, and the companions were holding their position. We get a lot from this. Number one, when the Prophet of Allah came to complete, that means part of his prayer was what? On what? In Janab. Because when he made the haram, he was what? In Janab. And that was accepted. But it will not be accepted if it was finished because of Umar al-Khattab. When Umar al-Khattab is so strong because he's done it in front of the companions, he led the companions, none of them had objected. So he had repeated the prayer himself. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had made Takbiratul Ihram on Janaba, and was accepted. And then he came to and completed. Number two, we gained from that he did not speak, because he waved with his hand. So when you are in a prayer, you're not allowed to speak. He didn't say, and mechanical, because he's praying. So he waved with his hand. So giving gesture while you're praying is no problem. So you give a gesture. So somebody, for example, talking while you're praying, you could just say, put your finger onto your mouth, tell him to what? To be quiet. It's no problem. Companions gave a gesture to that man who was talking. Stop talking. They did like this, a gesture. So without talking, you're not allowed to talk. For example, the person had seen somebody who wants to cross between him and the sutra. He puts his hands in order for him to stop. So that's just a gesture, no problem. But you're not allowed to talk. The third or the fourth issue that we gain from this, the companions who are in the front, the Prophet of Allah left, must be a big gap between them and the sutra. They did not move. So that's a big as well benefit from that. So they stayed put. And when the Imam left, still the sutra of the Imam is still there. We gain from this that when you are praying behind the Imam and you have missed a rak'ah or two, and the Imam said Salamu Alaikum, and the Imam is left, still the Imam is holding his sutra for you. You don't have to move, even though you're completing your rak'ah. So what I'm just saying to you, you are now still behind the Imam in terms of sutra wise. You don't move, because the companions did not move. They stayed waiting until the Prophet ﷺ came and he had completed the prayer. Also, we gain from this as a benefit that the person is allowed not to break off his prayer completely, it's actually to continue. So he doesn't have to complete. So if you are in a prayer, remember yourself in your wudu or in janaba, you have the option number one, which is to break the prayer and start the prayer from the beginning. Option number two, and that is to complete the prayer and build upon what you have prayed already. But that is with the condition that the place where you're going to make wudu or the place where you're going to make shower is not far away. It's just about next to you. So you're not going to get into your car and drive it and go home and then continue the prayer. It doesn't work like that. So the place for making wudu is next to you, like a sink. And also, we gain from this that you're not supposed to talk because you're in a prayer. And you're not supposed to face other than the Qibla unless you need to do so. That means, I'm not telling you to walk backward, but I'm just saying you only face other than the Qibla direction when you need to do so. You have to be facing the Qibla because you are what? In a prayer. So, let's say now, you are behind the Imam and you completed 2 rak'ah. Third rak'ah, you remember you're not in wudu. So if your wudu place is close from you, you could just break off the prayer, make wudu, and go to the Imam, whatever rak'ah you call with him, let's say the 4th rak'ah, you build up onto what? You 2 rak'ah which you have already prayed. You don't have to start from the beginning. So that's a big benefit you gain from that. But whereas here, regarding the garment and the body and the place, even if you have found out later on that your garment was not clean, your prayer is what? Invalid. Do you understand that? So if there was some excrement on top of your thought, excrement on top of your hand, excrement on top of the floor, and you prayed, you forgot to remove it. Or you remember that you forgot to remove, or you couldn't remove it, it was too hard, it's still there. But if you are at the moment in the prayer and you had let's say a shoe or a shirt which you found that there's an excrement, you could just take it off. As long as you don't really show your awrah. You could take it off, or you could rub it and clean it while you're praying. What is the proof for this is the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. And this hadith we get a lot from it as well. When the Prophet of Allah, he entered the prayer, the companions entered the prayer. While he was praying, he started taking his shoes off, putting them on his left. Companions, they followed to the Prophet of Allah with the letter. They thought this is part of the prayer. So what they did, they took their shoes and they put it on their left. SubhanAllah. They put it on their left, the shoes now. How many companions behind the Prophet of Allah? And how many are able to see the Prophet of Allah taking his shoes? Yet all the companions are done. Because when the first row sees the Prophet of Allah taking his shoes off, they will do the same, and the ones behind them will do the same, and the ones behind them will do the same. That's how it is. So we are depending upon the ones who are in front of us. So they took the shoes off, and they thought this is part of the what? Part of the prayer. It becomes a prayer that while you're praying, you take your shoes off. Then when the Prophet of Allah had finished, then he looked at the companions and he saw them taking their shoes off, putting them left. He said, the Prophet ﷺ, on the left, not exactly on the left, because the left, that means it would be the neighbor over there, but slightly on the left, where they could pray on top of it. So he said, why did you do that? The Messenger of Allah, we have seen you doing this, and we're following you. The Prophet did not blame them, did not say, why do you blindly follow me? No, he had actually championed that, to follow me. But he told them, Jibreel salam came and told me that there is qadar, filth, impurity on my shoes. So that's why I took them off. So if one of you comes to the masjid, then let him look into his shoes. Of course, if you're praying with your shoes on. If you have any filth, the way to purify that filth is by rubbing it against the ground. Okay? Now, what we gain from this, the Prophet of Allah, he had prayed with his shoes on, having filth, yet he did not repeat the prayer. Do you understand me? So he had took his shoes off. Part of his prayer at the beginning, it was with filth, with impurity on his shoes. And we don't have a proof to say that the person's, if he had finished the prayer, that he has to repeat it if he found filth on his body or his place or his clothes. So we say that if he found it, then no problem. Why we have repeated that wudu? Because of Umar al-Khattab. Otherwise we would have just said exactly the same thing. Because these are prerequisites. Whether it is wudu or the purity of the place in the body and the garment. So all the prerequisites. But because of the hadith of Umar al-Khattab had said to us that you have to make wudu, you have to repeat the prayer if you have remembered that you were not on tahara. Right. Going to the fourth, please.
Number 4, covering of the awrah. This is the part of the body that are meant to be covered, as explained below.
Right. Fourth condition, covering the awrah. The awrah is the parts that you're not allowed to supposed to show, except your spouse. But in the prayer, this awrah has to be covered. Even if you are praying in your room, you cannot pray naked. And the awrah differs from the man to the woman. The man's awrah is for another man to see from the navel to the knees. But this is not the awrah of the prayer. The awrah of the prayer is extra, which is the shoulders. The shoulders are part of the awrah. So, the man can see from the man is from the navel to the knees. Between the navel and the knees is the awrah. The navel itself and the knees, they're not awrah. But in between, it's awrah. And as for the prayer, the shoulders, because the Prophet of Allah, he had said to the person who was praying, not covering the shoulder, قَطِّ عَتِقَيْكَ, that is, cover your وَجْعَلْ عَلَى عَتِقَيْكَ, leave some of the clothes on top of your shoulder. As for the woman, all of her body is awrah, except for her hands and her face. In the prayer, she must show her face and her hands. But if she's from those women who see that her face is awrah, and still in the prayer, where there's no men or there's no, except for maharim, that she has to show her face. Covering the face is only when she's in the presence of other people. If she believes that the face is awrah. But we say that according to what we believe, that it is not awrah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Right. So the awrah, it has to be covered during the prayer. Now if the person was in the prayer and he was showing part of his body, or the sister, she was praying, suddenly one of the children pulled her scarf, if she can straight away covers her head and that person who's praying covers his body, it's no problem, continue. Exactly the same thing as we have said regarding finding impurity on your body, on your clothes, on your place. So you just remove it while you pray. But if you did not cover it straight away, or you have left it and we have left it, and you found out after your prayer, then the prayer is exactly like the wudu, you have to repeat it. Right, so you need to know that the awrah, if you have exposed it while you pray, and then straight away, without any delay, you covered it, like the sister, she had covered her hair, or the brother had covered his back, let's say, because remember, from the navel to the knees is awrah. So some of the people, when they put a shirt, and as soon as they make ruku', it shrinks and shows some of his back. If that back which is being shown is between the navel and the knees, then it's showing his awrah. He has to cover it straight away. If he does not cover it, then he will be invalidating his prayer. The awrah, now Allah, the proof for that, the Prophet ﷺ, he had said to Jarrah al-Aslami, غطي فخذك فإن الفخذ عورة. Cover your thigh, for by verily your thigh is awrah. And also he said, Prophet ﷺ, al-mar'atu awrah, the woman, she is awrah. And he also said, Allah does not accept a prayer of a person, of a woman who is adult, except she's got khimar. Because of that hadith, because of that hadith, we say that it is not going to be accepted if your awrah was exposed, it is being exposed and you did not cover it, or you found out later on, because of the hadith, لا يقبل الله, Allah does not accept the prayer of a person or a woman who is adult unless she covers her hair. Khimar. طيب. Coming to the fifth condition.
Number 5, facing the Qibla.
Facing the Qibla, for the ayah, فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, and that is Allah commanded His Prophet Muhammad after he was had to be facing Bayt al-Maqdis to turn 180 degrees and face Al-Kaaba. The Prophet of Allah, by the way, is to pray towards the Kaaba in Mecca. Then when he migrated to Medina, he started praying towards Bayt al-Maqdis in order to get closer to the Jews who were surrounding Medina. Then Allah's Messenger did not like it, so he started looking and supplicating Allah Azza wa Jalla. Later on, he made him to return to the Masjid al-Haram back again. So the person is commanded to turn himself to the Qibla whenever he prays. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to that man who had made a mistake in his prayer, when you're about to start the prayer, then face the Qibla. When you finish your wudu, when you're about to start the prayer, face the Qibla. Facing the Qibla, now it's not as the wudu or the awrah. The reason behind this, if a person, let's say, he had chosen to pray to a certain direction, believing it's a Qibla. If he was in the prayer, and somebody told him, this is the Qibla to the right, then he will turn to the right, or to the left, or the person will hold him from the back, and will make him to turn to the Qibla. What's the proof for that? The Prophet of Allah, when he was praying towards Bayt al-Maqdis, the command came to pray towards the Kaaba, so they turned while they were praying. And the person who prayed with the Prophet of Allah, he went to pray in another masjid where the place where the Banu Salama, they were praying, and they were as well, he told him the Asr prayer, remember, or Maghrib prayer, and they also the same thing, they turned their prayer 180 degrees towards the Qibla. They did not start from the beginning, but actually they have continued the prayer and they turned while they were praying. There was of course a saying regarding Masjid al-Qiblatayn, that the Prophet of Allah was in that place where the command came to turn himself to the Qibla. That is unauthentic. We don't find a trace for that, where the Prophet of Allah had changed to the Qibla. There was a Masjid al-Qiblatayn. You know heard about this. The Masjid got two Qibla. It's called Masjid got two Qibla. You find some people who are praying towards Bayt al-Maqdis, two rak'ah towards Al-Haram. That's not correct. And some people as well designate a visit to it. It should not be a visit because it's not one of the religious sites. Like, now this Qibla, if you did not pray towards the Qibla, you found out later on, you don't have to repeat it. What's the proof for that? Companions, one night, they were praying towards the Qibla. It was during the night, they couldn't know what it is. So each person made a line for himself. That's the Qibla, that's the Qibla. And then when it was the light in the morning, they found that each person was praying in a different direction. So they went to the Prophet of Allah, and the Prophet of Allah did not command them to repeat that prayer. So you don't have to. So this is like exactly like finding excrement onto the shoes or into the clothes or into the place. No problem. Or into the body, because we have the companions did not repeat the prayer. Now, if you are praying voluntarily and you are on a mount meaning like a camel or in a car, then you don't have to face the Qibla. So you can start facing the Qibla, and then wherever you go, okay, it doesn't matter. So you don't have to face the Qibla. Is that understood? So if you are praying in the car, it doesn't matter. So you start your car. If you are not to be the driver, of course, you can't be driving and praying at the same time. But you are the passenger. So you start your prayer, Allah Akbar, towards the what? The Qibla. Then regardless of the car where it goes, you're praying in the car, sitting down of course, and there is no need to face the Qibla, provided the Prophet Allah used to pray his nafila on top of his camel, and the camel goes wherever it goes. Number 6.
Number 6, intention.
Intention. Intention is that what is your determination? That's the word. Your determination. What is that thing that you are doing? So you know what you're doing. So if you are praying Dhuhr, then you know that you're praying Dhuhr. If you're praying Asr, then you know you're praying Asr. If you're praying the Dhuhr Sunnah, you know you're praying the Dhuhr Sunnah. There is no alteration. I intend to pray for Rak'ah Dhuhr. All of that is not there. And I'm saying it not there in your tongue, not even your heart. I'm not saying I'm saying in my heart. Both is not the same. Because there's a foul smell coming. Wait a second, so isn't it?
It's the wet pain, baby.
Huh?
Like there's things that say wet pain. That's what smells.
There's a very bad smell coming. Give me something outside. Yes, give it. I don't know what it is. Like poo.
Can I shut the doors?
No, leave it, it's hot. Fine. So the person is not uttering whether on the tongue or in the heart. The intention is knowing what you're doing. So if you are one of these people who utter, it's a bid'ah, and the prayer goes with what you have intended in your heart, regardless of what you have said in your tongue. So if, let's say, for example, you're running because you want to catch up with a Dhuhr prayer behind the Imam, and then you lined up yourself behind the Dhuhr, and then you said, I intend to pray 4 Rak'ah Asr, because you were really fast. Allahu Akbar. But you are coming to the Dhuhr, and you know that you're coming to the Dhuhr, but there was a slip of a tongue. This doesn't matter. But you still did a bid'ah. But I'm just saying it doesn't matter. And vice versa. Let's say you're coming to the Imam and you're thinking that the Imam is praying Asr. But he's actually praying what? Dhuhr. And you make it, I intend to pray Dhuhr. Your tongue slipped wrongly, but it matches the prayer of the Imam. But your intention to pray what? Asr. It will be Asr, it will not be Dhuhr. So if it goes onto the heart, it does not go to what is in the tongue. So what is your determination? That's what it is. Fine. There are the people, they really go deep into this intention, and then whispering starts. So, I intend to pray for Rak'ah Dhuhr behind the Imam, so and so. Fard, Hadar, these words, and then, I missed a word, then he could start from the beginning. I intend, pray. SubhanAllah. When I was a kid, one of the things that put me off from the prayer is actually these things. is that one of the people, one of my relatives, it was actually my auntie, she taught me the prayer. I intend for, and because it was too long, I given up on praying. Because I can't really repeat those words, too much. So I think I remember I was 7 years old, 8 years old, God, this is too long. Then when you know the deen, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, that's it. Alhamdulillah, finished now the conditions. Coming to the description of the prayer. Description of the prayer is a long chapter, so it's a long hadith. I am going to be myself delivering as much as I can from the prayer. Okay? Or, because it's going to be talking about it in details, we could leave that for you. Please read it. We could go straight away to Arkan as-Salah. Because this is now the detailed in that hadith. What the detailed issues in that hadith. Now.
And the necessary components of the prayer on page 111.
Go on, number one.
Number one, the opening takbir.
Takbirat al-Ihram. Takbirat al-Ihram is a pillar. That is to raise up your hands and say Allahu Akbar. Now, raising up the hands is not the pillar. Is Allahu Akbar is the pillar. Do you understand? So Allahu Akbar, and that is the key. The start of the prayer. And if you miss Takbirat al-Ihram, then your whole prayer is jeopardized. How can I miss Takbirat al-Ihram? I will tell you how. Because Takbirat al-Ihram has to be said fully standing up. If you came to the Imam in his ruku and you want to catch up with the ruku, are you okay? Why are you blocking your nose? So, if you came to the Imam and he's in the ruku, some people they are rushing because they want to catch up with the rak'ah. So what do? Allahu Akbar. Because he wants to catch with the rak'ah, with the ruku. Allahu Akbar. So part of his Takbirat al-Ihram was said while he was going down. His prayer will not be valid as an obligatory. Because if some of the scholars was going to be accepted voluntary, but not obligatory. You missed the whole prayer. So you need to make Takbirat al-Ihram fully standing up. Allahu Akbar. And put your hands down. Not Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And then, in the ruku, Allahu Akbar, you go ruku. Okay? If he's in the sujood, Allahu Akbar. And then Allahu Akbar for the sujood. Second Allahu Akbar, it doesn't matter, you said it while you're going down. Some people, the Imams on the ruku, they say Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, they go for ruku. That's common. Very common. Which is for the sisters of Nasin. That is, they say Allahu Akbar, they put the right on the left. But the Imam is not in that position. The Imam is in the sujood. So Takbirat al-Ihram is Allahu Akbar. You put your hands up and you put him down beside your body. And then another Allahu Akbar for whatever the Imam is on, ruku or sujood. Don't mess with Takbirat al-Ihram or mess up with Takbirat al-Ihram by not doing it when you're fully standing up. Number two.
Number two, the act of standing in the obligatory prayers for the one who has the ability to do so.
In the Fard prayer, this is not in the Sunnah, in the Fard prayer, you have to stand up unless you're not capable of standing up. And if you are voluntary, then it's up to you. You could pray down and then have a reward which is half of the reward. You could pray even lying on your side. And that's voluntary, but not the obligatory. Third one.
Number three, reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in every rak'ah.
Fatiha is a pillar. Unless you are praying behind the Imam and the Imam, because you caught up with the prayer a bit late, so you did not catch up with the full Fatiha, or the Imam was in his ruku', there is no Fatiha upon you, say Allahu Akbar, catch up with the ruku', you caught up with the rak'ah. But if you caught up with the Imam from the beginning, you're supposed to read the Fatiha. Unless it is loud recitation, and there is no recitation for you. Fatiha has to be in every rak'ah. Now,
4 and 5. The act of bowing and having calmness and stillness while bowing.
ruku', bowing, and having calmness, tuma'nina, is both pillars. Tuma'nina means to say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim with this word, at least Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. And then your back is straight, you're holding your knees. That's how the ruku', tranquility or ease is to be prayed in that way. Holding your knees, back is straight, your head is not up, it's not going down, your head is not like this tilting up or going down, it's just in parallel with, in line with your back. Now,
6 and 7. Standing up straight after bowing and having calmness and stillness while standing.
this is Sami Allahu liman hamida. It's not the word, just to stand up after ruku', and that is to be standing still in it. Like you don't go bang bang. So you go Sami Allahu liman hamida, you stay in the upright posture, and then you go to the. So you don't really. You have to like a moment of settling. It's not going back and forth. So you're not going Sami Allahu liman hamida and straight away to sujood. You have to settle yourself. Rabbana lakal hamd, and you go down. That's 2 pillars. Now,
8 and 9.
some of the people, they don't really complete it. There's halfway and they go down. You complete upright posture.
8 and 9. The act of prostrating.
Can't you smell this one, guys? Or
Sometimes.
huh?
Yeah, sometimes it keeps coming.
Keeps coming, isn't it? Like a foul smell, like a sewage. Give me dizzy. I'm getting dizzy. Alhamdulillah, somebody's with me. Bye. Bye.
8 and 9. The act of prostrating and having calmness and stillness while prostrating.
Right, again, this is another 2 pillars, prostration and plus being calm. Prostration to make sujood with your face, with 7 limbs to be touching, and that is the 2 palms, and then the face and the nose is 1, that becomes a 3, and the 2 knees is 5, and then the 2 feet, and makes it 7. So the 7 limbs and tranquility. That means you're not really doing it fast. You're settling and then you're going up. That's the sujood. Number 10 and 11.
10 and 11. The act of sitting between the 2 prostrations and having calmness and stillness during.
Between the 2 sajda, you have to as well make your back upright when you sit. So it's not like halfway and you go back to the second sajda. So many people that do that. You settle and then you go back to the second sajda. Number 12.
Number 12, the final tashahhud.
Final tashahhud. Also from the obligatories. So there's a fact that this bad smell coming in. Very bad. Very bad. Go on. Oh my God, go on. I'm going to vomit. Go on. The fact that after the tashahhud.
Note, the most authentic narration concerning the wording of the tashahhud is that narrated by Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, who said the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught me the tashahhud while my 2 hands were between his, like he would teach me a chapter of the Quran. The wording was tahiyyatu,
which is the one you know. But there's another note after that, which is when you say Salamu alayka ayyuha nabi. Okay, some of the scholars they say Assalamu ala nabi, because Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, we used to say Salamu alayka ayyuha nabi when the Prophet was alive. When he died, we said Assalamu ala nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh instead of Assalamu alayka ayyuha nabi. So Assalamu ala nabi. Our Shaykh al-Albani supports that, rahimahullah. It's in your book. Number 13.
Number 13, saying prayers to the Prophet ﷺ after the final tashahhud.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. And number 14.
Number 14, the salutation.
And that is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Or Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We're going to be talking about, inshallah, salutation, how it is. So up to here, we have finished, alhamdulillah, the pillars of the prayer. And that is, if you don't have salutation, prayer will be invalid. Now I'm going to be talking about the obligatory, not the pillars, the obligatory. If you miss them, it doesn't mean that your prayer is invalid. And these are obligatory, so they're not as strong as the pillars. Go on, number 1.
The obligatory acts of prayer. Number 1, the saying of the takbir for the movements in the prayer, and the saying of Allah hears him who praise him, our Lord for you is the praise.
So saying the word Allahu Akbar and saying Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd, Allahu Akbar, not takbirat al-ihram, there are takbirat. Which is between ruku' and sujood. Saying the word Allahu Akbar is obligatory, but it's not a pillar. Number 2.
Number 2, the final tashahhud.
The middle tashahhud, because if you left it and you forgot and you stood up, still pray to sajda for it. That does not make it a pillar. It's obligatory. Number 3.
Number 3 is obligatory from the person when he prays. A sutra, a barrier in front of him that prevents people from passing by in front of him. And he should not look beyond the sutra.
The sutra is also an obligation, it's not a pillar. But if you did not take a sutra and somebody had passed in front of you, if it's a man, then half of your prayer is gone. If it's a woman who's an adult, then your prayer will be invalidated. And if it's a donkey or a black dog, the same thing takes place. The sutra, when you have it, you need to be close to it. And there's a title there, person to get close to the sutra. How much close to the sutra? Is to leave a gap of a sheep passage between his head and the sutra. So you make a prostration where your head lands. That spot between that and the sutra is supposed to be about half a meter. It's about 2 foot. Not 2 foot. Yeah, 2 foot. Almost 2 foot. Okay. Right. The sutra, meaning that is something like a pillar or like the stand of the microphone, the leg of the table, the wall, the tree, the leg of the bed. Okay, that's the sutra. It has to have a minimum length of the bone that supports the person on top of the camel. It's about half a meter. So I would say this bottle maybe is not enough. It has to be at least like this microphone stand, because it is a dira'. The ra' is between the tip of the finger and up to the elbow. That's the dira'. So from here to there. That is sutra. And not supposed to be like a line you draw it. It's not. And when you put the sutra, then we're not supposed to pass between you and your sutra. We're not allowed to do that. And I'm not allowed to let you to pass between me and my sutra. But if you took your sutra, then you're safe regarding invalidation of your prayer. But if you haven't, if any person passed by your prostration spot and your feet, then if it's a woman, as I said, or a black dog, or a donkey, it will invalidate the prayer. And if it's another person, it will be half of your prayer is gone, half of the reward. When you have an imam, you don't need a sutra, because the imam sutra is sutra for the rest. Could it be these people? I'm joking. The sunnah of the salah, inshallah, we'll leave them for next time. We're going to be doing the prayer when we have more people, inshallah. Yeah. We'll illustrate for you the prayer. The Prophet. No. If you have any questions, please go ahead.